Have you ever wondered why so many spiritually sensitive people, individuals with a deep inner knowing and a capacity for awareness, are born into families that are, let's say, less than ideal? Families that are dysfunctional, toxic, or just plain painful. You might think, if there's some kind of intelligence behind all this, why would it put these sensitive souls into such difficult circumstances? But what if I told you that this is not a mistake? What if the very thing you've been cursing, the very situation you've been trying to run from your entire life, is actually the catalyst for your greatest growth? We often have this idea that spiritual awakening should come from pleasant experiences, like meditation retreats, reading wise books, or sitting in beautiful gardens. And yes, those things can help. But the real awakening, the kind that shakes you to your very core, often comes through fire. It comes through difficulty. It comes through having everything you thought you were, everything you thought you needed, stripped away until all that remains is what you truly are. Think about it this way. If you were born into a perfectly harmonious family, where everyone was kind and understanding, where love flowed freely, would you ever have a reason to question anything? Would you ever need to look deeper? Would you ever have to develop that inner strength, that capacity to see through illusion? Probably not. You'd just flow along with the current, content and comfortable, never knowing there was anything else. But a toxic family, a dysfunctional family, gives you something else entirely. It gives you friction. It gives you problems that cannot be solved by ordinary means. It presents you with situations where you cannot simply go along with what everyone else is doing, because what everyone else is doing is clearly not working. And in that friction, in that impossibility, something begins to wake up. Let me put it another way. When a grain of sand gets inside an oyster, it irritates it. It hurts. The oyster can't just spit it out. So, what does it do? It begins to coat that grain of sand with layer upon layer of a beautiful pearlescent substance. Slowly, patiently, over time, that irritating grain becomes a pearl. The most beautiful thing the oyster creates comes from the thing that hurt it the most. Your difficult family was that grain of sand. And you, through all your struggles, through all your pain, through all those years of trying to understand, you've been developing something that people born into easy circumstances never have to. You've been developing real wisdom, not the kind you read in books, but the kind that comes from figuring out how to survive when everything around you is chaos. But here's where it gets really interesting. A toxic family doesn't just create problems, it creates a very specific kind of problem. It creates deep confusion about the nature of love. And this, strange as it sounds, is a powerful gateway to awakening. You see, most people never question what love is. They just accept whatever their family taught them. If their family was loving, they assume that's what love looks like. If their family was distant or conditional, they assume love is supposed to feel that way. They never have to examine it. They just repeat the pattern. But when you're born into a toxic family, you can't do this. The pattern is so obviously broken that you cannot simply repeat it without causing yourself immense pain. You might try at first, many of us do, but eventually, something inside you rebels. Something says, no, this isn't right. This isn't what love is supposed to be. And in that moment of rebellion, in that refusal to accept the broken pattern, you've taken the first step toward awakening. Because now, you have to figure out for yourself what love actually is. You can't rely on what you were taught. You can't trust the programming. You have to go deeper. You have to look within and discover what love means when it's not tangled up with manipulation, control, and all the baggage your family attached to it. You were put in that situation not to suffer, though there was suffering, and not to be damaged. Though there was damage, but to be forced to wake up, to be forced to question, to be forced to look deeper than most people ever have to. Now, I want to be crystal clear about something. This doesn't mean the pain wasn't real. It doesn't mean what happened to you was okay. It absolutely does not mean you should feel grateful for neglect or mistreatment. That would be completely missing the point. The pain was real. The damage was real. What happened was not right. But here's the thing about reality. It doesn't always align with our ideas of right and wrong. A tree doesn't grow strong by being kept in a greenhouse. It grows strong by being bent by the wind, by having to reach for the light, by developing deep roots to keep from being blown over. The wind isn't kind. The wind is just wind. But without the wind, the tree would never develop its strength. Your family was the wind. And you, whether you realize it or not, have been developing roots that go incredibly deep, roots that most people never have to grow. And those roots, that depth, that's what makes you capable of understanding things that others cannot. Think about the people you know who had easy childhoods, comfortable, pleasant, everything handed to them. What are they like now? I'm not saying they're bad people, but often, they have a certain shallowness to them, don't they? A certain inability to grasp the darker, deeper aspects of life. They live on the surface because they've never had to go beneath it. They can believe in simple fairy tales because their life has been a bit of a fairy tale, but you can't believe in those simple stories anymore. You've seen behind the curtain. You know that families can be cruel, that parents can be selfish, that love can be twisted into something unrecognizable. And while this knowledge was painful to acquire, it has made you real in a way that protected people never become. You've been stripped of your illusions, and while most people spend their entire lives clinging to illusions, you don't have that luxury. You had to see things as they actually are. And seeing things as they are is the beginning of all wisdom. It's the start of true spiritual awakening. Now, let's talk about something that might be uncomfortable. Here's a truth that can be hard to accept. Your family wasn't just toxic to you. They were toxic because they were wounded. And they were wounded because their parents were wounded. And their parents were wounded because their parents were wounded. It goes back and back, generation after generation, each one unconsciously passing on the pain they received because they didn't know how to do anything else. You were the culmination of all that pain. All those generations of wounds, in a way, they all flowed into you. And you were the one who finally had the sensitivity and the strength to say, this stops here. You were the one who finally looked at the pattern and said, no more, I will not pass this on. I will not continue this cycle. And that is why you are different. That is why you were chosen, if you want to use that word. Not because you're special in some ego sense, but because your soul was strong enough to say, I can carry this. I can be the one who breaks the chain. Think about what that truly means. Your family, as difficult as they weren't your enemies. In a strange, cosmic sense, they were your teachers. Terrible teachers, yes, who taught through pain instead of love, but teachers nonetheless. They showed you exactly what not to do. They showed you what happens when people don't wake up, when they don't question, when they simply repeat the patterns they inherited. They gave you the ultimate reason to seek a different way. And in finding that way for yourself, you not only heal yourself, but you heal the generations that came before you and protect the ones that will come after. Thanks for watching.